Thank you so much for tuning back into another segment here on GEMS podcast. With me today is Rebecca Lepard, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her background, and then we're going to get into a very fruitful conversation that is meaningful. So, Rebecca Lepard is founder of Upgrading Women, a communication and leadership training provider for women. She is an Indonesian mother of three who lives with her British husband in England. She is passionate in solving problems on equity gap, toxic workplace, social justice, and promoting happy living. And she is really passionate about doing it all. And especially whenever you are a mother, you begin to wear multiple hats. But a big component of not just being a mother is also knowing who you are and how do you really practice self-care so you could fulfill your dreams too, while also helping your family with theirs and your business as well. So she has a lot of versatility, and we're going to unpack some of that today. So let me welcome on the woman behind it all, Rebecca Lepard.
Hi, Genesis.
Hey, Rebecca, how are you doing?
I'm very well. And I have to say, I love your name, and that I didn't even think about that name for my own daughter. Because I love biblical names that are not names of people.
Mm.
So my children are Raven, the blackbird from Noah's Ark, and the second one is Rex, just because it means king. And the third one, my daughter, is Riva.
Okay. That is super cool. And they all start with a R. Raven,
Yes,
Rex, and
and Riva.
Riva. How do you spell the last one?
No, it's river,
Uh-huh.
but because British accent is river, just like the River Jordan, the river
Oh, okay.
what have you. But in here, her name is pronounced Riva.
Riva. Oh, okay. Awesome. And
Just like water.
so thank you for sharing that. And before we dive into the work that you're doing, because I definitely want to hear what your pandemic survivor story is and
Oh gosh, yeah.
what allowed you to get to where you are now. I want the audience to be able to connect with you though in a fun and personal manner. So there are two options, and I'm sure you're familiar because you've done your
Yeah.
research. So we could do either a rapid fire game or an icebreaker. What are you in the mood for?
Always rapid fire.
Okay,
I'm a sprinter.
okay, it's rapid for a reason. So here we go. We're playing rapid fire with Rebecca and Genesis. Do 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 do. Question number one. You mentioned that you're a sprinter. So outside of sprinting and running, would you say that's your favorite sport?
No. Basketball is.
Question two. What is your drink of choice? Coffee, tea, or something else like an adult beverage?
I am a coffee drinker, but lately I opt in taking caffeine tablet instead of coffee.
Okay.
Because I can sustain my focus in that way without having to go to the bathroom.
Question three. Your bio mentions that you are Indonesian and you're married to a British. So how was it merging both cultures together or backgrounds?
We've been married for 10 years, and every single day we still struggle with it. But in the end, everything that we argue about in terms of like the best parenting style, how to go about things, the tiebreaker is Google, because it's so strange as simple as, if you have a child who has a high fever, do you wrap them up, with blankets and stuff? Which in my culture, it's like that. You wrap it up, even though we're in the tropics. So when because you're shivering when you have fever. But in the British culture, no, you strip them down to just the nappy diaper in America. So I would be like wrapping up my feverish child, and when I look away, when I come back, why is my baby just only wearing pants and a diaper? Well, this is how we treat fever kid. So in the end, okay, neither you or I are doctors, so let's go to Google and find the best answer. In the end, it's just paracetamol.
Question 4, favorite color.
Pink.
Question 5, favorite movie.
Oh gosh, that's tough. Oh, that's tough. I have been watching Miss Sloane. Jessica Chastain starred in it, and I love it because that it is it's a female lead, and B, the dialogue is real, and the characters are three-dimensional, as in, is she a hero, or is she a villain, or can it be both? So I love that. It's probably one of few movies that I've watched more than once, because I really still want to like study the character even more. It's not even that famous of a movie, but I
Wow.
totally recommend it.
So thank you for sharing. I'm going to look that one up because I haven't heard of that one. So Miss Sloan. Question 6. If you could go anywhere in the world and money was not an option, where would you go?
Oh, go back home to Indonesia.
Question 7. What is your favorite food?
All of Indonesian food. Gosh. We have meatball soup. I know it sounds so basic, but you know that every culture has their own version of meatball. Every culture has their own version of pancake.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess if I can choose one food that I can eat 3 times a day for the rest of my life, meatball soup, Indonesian meatball soup.
Question 8. If you could have lunch or dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be?
Melinda French Gates.
Question 9. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Teleport.
Question 10. Pass or play? Here are the rules. If you pass, our rules are reversed and you get to ask me a question. If you choose to play, I ask one last question to wrap up rapid fire. So do you want to pass or play?
Play.
Okie dokie. Last question. Would you rather a dream car, dream home, or hell? Let's go big and have both.
Dream house.
Amazing. And thank you for playing rapid fire. So we're going to jump into the main part of the segment, which is the work that you're doing now. And it's sharing your pandemic survivor story. But just give us a quick overview of who you are from growing up to now and how that has made you the woman that you are.
Ooh. Let's see how I can
A Cliff Notes version.
Yeah. I can narrate my autobiography in 1 minute. It's a good one. So I was born a double minority in that I'm a girl in an Asian culture, which adores boys. So I was born a girl as a firstborn to a middle class family. a Christian family in a Muslim country. So again, minority, double minority. And because my family thankfully uh, rose from middle class to upper middle class, my parents could afford to send me to very, very good schools, like all girls Catholic high school, top of the top. Um, and I went there and I was surrounded by brilliance. And that was when I realized for the first time that, wow, if we let these girls run the world, literally, it's going to be a completely different history. So being surrounded by these girls, brilliant girls, and to this day we still have a group chat, all what, 500 of us. Yeah, and we're like, there's one in New York who's a video editor, there's one in Singapore who's a software engineer. We're everywhere, coming from this school in Jakarta, Indonesia. And I never had let my focus away from my career, my dreams, and everything. So everything I did and have done is to build my career. So I became a senior editor of a national magazine by the time I was 24. And I became an account director in a PR agency when I was 26, and I was a director of public relations in a global company when I was 29. So, and I'm 38 now. So all of that had formed me like this very, very, like, work is my joy, and my work or my labor is being a parent. I know I'm not alone in this way of in this mindset, but I also know that women are made to feel guilty or shamed if they say they love their job, if they say they don't feel guilt when they go to work, you know? And I'm here to say, hey, that is absolutely fine. Men have no guilt, and they are allowed and celebrated to be ambitious. And we are being shamed for having an ambition. So for me, it's like the more I say it, the more I articulate it, despite my friends or my neighbor would look at me like, ugh, Rebecca, you have 3 children, young children, age 9, 5, and 2. Why are you, staying up late all night working, recording a podcast in ungodly hours and all of that stuff? But I'm like, that is what brings me joy. So when the pandemic happened, what happened was, because it happened in Asia, and we were at the epicenter of it all, we got the financial hit first. So when the first world, the UK and US, were still debating over mask and stuff, March 2020, my husband got furloughed from his job. And because he was the expat in that country, he was then due to be repatriated back to England.
Okay, let's pause really quick there, because I'm
Yes.
going to put some context for the audience, because I understand this, especially working in a field that does that. So for those of you listening, an expat is whenever you are working in another country that is outside of your home base. And whenever you repatriate that, that means that they are sending you back to your home base to work in your home base because it is more cost effective to do that, because when you are an expat, you get more perks and you get a higher pay because you're no longer working in a country that is your home country. And that may look like they'll put you in a compound, which is a place that you live with your fellow coworkers, but it is very well secured, as at least from the oil and gas perspective, which is my industry where I spent 12 years in. And they may give you a car service because depending on what country you're working in, it is not safe for them to allow their employees to travel on their own or etc. So I just wanted to share that so you could connect the dots with where Rebecca is coming from as she continues to build upon the pandemic survivor story. And then Rebecca, I'm going to chime in here and there because I want to make sure that the audience is getting it and they're understanding it. And then I'm also going to ask some questions because just hearing how you grew up and how that has been a driving factor for you reaching various milestones in your career and you loving your work because it's tied to your passion, but then you also feel like your work is tied to your kids, which is the labor that you're doing for them at home. So I just wanted to just summarize that before you continue to make sure the audience is following along.
Thank you for that. Yes. In my husband's case, he did not work in a different branch. So when he was repatriated, he was basically just cut off from any income. So that is the sad part. That is when the rug was pulled under our life, our feet, basically. Um, I was employed at the time, but having the 3 children and 2 of whom were sent to an international private school that cost an arm and a leg, we just couldn't see how we could sustain living with only one income in an uncertain time. You know, if it's a non-pandemic time and he lost his job, he could probably get another job in a month or 2. But I said to him, we have to A, have some faith, have a lot of faith, a bucket load of faith, and B, be pragmatic about things as well. So we decided that when we watch the news and see how world leaders are still running around like headless chickens on how to navigate around this pandemic, because at the beginning a lot of people still think that, oh, this is probably just another SARS, it will go, or this is going to be just like Ebola that is just contained. Nobody predicted that it was going to be global.
I was over here talking and I muted on a big scale because, you know, even though there was information that was privy, because I feel like different countries had already warned us on what to look forward to. And I'm based in the US and you're based in the UK. Some government officials said, oh, no, we're not going to get it. So we did not prepare for it. And then whenever it really came full fledged, we were scrambling because we didn't know what to do. We were scrambling from PPE perspectives, personal protective equipment. Our hospitals weren't prepared as people were catching SARS, which is COVID, and etc. So then the hospitals were overstaffed with patients and understaffed with physicians, um, physicians, which are the doctors, the nurse practitioners, the CNAs, and etc. And then you saw medical negligence happening because they are expecting to do so much, but with little resources. So who's suffering? The patients are suffering, and it sucked. And I could honestly say it sucked and I hated it because my dad was one of those patients that passed from medical negligence. He went in May, paralyzed 3 days later, and then ended up dying in November 25th, the day before Thanksgiving. So I feel like if we would have gotten wind and really paid attention to whenever the information was privy, we could have got ahead of the curve. We could have been more proactive versus reactive, in my personal
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Oh, girl, I have personally lost, people around me. I praise be to God that I didn't lose any family members, but I did lose friends, and I have my best friend becoming a widow at my age with two small children, simply because of all of this. That disappointingly, our leaders aren't the problem solver that that they should be. But then I did my own calculus in that, okay, this is all equally bad, but we have the option we actually had the option to stay in Indonesia, because my husband has the right to stay because he's married to an Indonesian. Um, so he was not forced to be out of the country in the legal sense. However, we're like, okay, England provides free healthcare in the pandemic. Isn't that the one luxury that you should grab it, at whatever sacrifice? Yes, of course, the sacrifice would be like leaving the tropical country with beautiful beaches and and summer all year long, and nice food, and affordable help. Um, we had nannies, we had all the support system that would have that allowed us to actually be two working parents. So okay, so we will have to live um, in a quote unquote normal life, as opposed to the quote unquote luxurious life, with help, with the weather, with the scenery. Um, and we trade that with free healthcare, something that is not even available in the US,
No,
right?
it is not. We do not have universal health care like England or Canada, where some of my family lives in Canada. And it does make it hard because whenever you don't have universal health care and then you look at status quo, or you look at class systems, people who have insurance versus people who don't have insurance, the quality of care does lack, even though some people may quote unquote say, oh, it doesn't make a difference. It does make a difference, especially on
Mm-hmm.
where you live, what your socioeconomic bracket is, or etc. Because even though you may have insurance, you may have PPO versus HMO, or you may have a certain tier of insurance that may or may not cover certain things. And then if the hospital is overstaffed already with patients, then your quality of care is going to depend on a triage. Who's the most severe to the less severe? And you may be waiting for hours and hours and hours. And then there's other factors that go involved in that. So what I'm hearing, Rebecca, you said you had to make a decision and weigh the pros and cons of either staying in Indonesia with the luxurious life, or trading that as a trade-off and going to England, where there is free healthcare. In case something were to happen, you would have access to that healthcare, but then you're leaving some other forms on the table. And that is a hard
Mm-hmm.
decision, because both of them can weigh in based on your family structure and dynamics and what your needs are, as well as your wants too, in my opinion.
Oh yes, absolutely. When these days, 2 years after we moved to England, w- our conversation, my husband and I, we always like, okay, when we can afford it, we will hire a nanny. We will hire a nanny. So it's not even when we can afford it, we go on a vacation, or let's upgrade our car. No, our first and foremost splurge in our needs and wants is to have that village. It does take a village to raise children, and we don't have it here. Well, even if we could afford it, during the pandemic, you cannot have people visiting your household, right? So even that we have so my husband has a sister who lives about 20 minutes away from us, who can, from time to time help us around. Even though, she has her own son, but there is, when there is someone out here. But because of the lockdown rules, she couldn't even enter the house. I remember there's a photo of us celebrating her birthday on the pavement, standing 2 meters away, 2 meters apart, like happy birthday. So living in the pandemic, and having absolutely no income, because eventually I had to quit my job.
Wow, because I'm sure you had to quit your job. And then you did mention early on your husband was furloughed.
Mhm.
And early
At
part in
0% salary, by the way.
so okay, I'm resonating with this. And the reason why I'm resonating with this, because in the pandemic, 1 week after my father passed, I found out
Mm,
that I was being laid off from oil and gas and energy. And during that time, my husband was a chef by trade. So we all know with the lockdown, restaurants went away.
mhm.
So he was no longer working. So can you imagine? So, audience, imagine where Rebecca and I are coming from. When neither person is working, all you have to do is easily jump into a BCP, business continuity plan, not from a work perspective, but from a personal perspective. What are you going to do? Because, as some people said, this just got real.
Yes.
Because
It
there,
just hit the fan.
yes. But I said, you know what? I do come from a spiritual and religious background. So I was like, we just got to have faith. Like, um, it may be hard. We're just going to have to buckle down, and we're going to use the resources that we have, and we're just going to muddle through. This podcast was birthed out of that, because after losing my father, going through the grief journey and etc. And I say all this to say is I could resonate with you having to leave your job, on top of you dealing with the fact that your husband was furloughed. But I'm sure you probably had to leave your job because if your kids are home, you have to probably school them at home. And if you don't have the resources and people can't come into the home because of what the government restrictions are, then who's going to do it? Right?
Exactly. Exactly. So it was, I think the pandemic was almost designed to kill women's career. I tell you.
Wait.
Mothers, especially.
I wouldn't say kill. I would just say reinvent and retrospect, because there's a lot of mothers that really got creative.
Yes, absolutely. Myself included. But when you were there in the thick of it, not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, being thankful that you don't even have the temperature or you don't have a sudden cough, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was it was a faith crusher, a mental health crisis. If I didn't have that faith, I don't think I will still be here talking to you in normal sentence. Because so my baby, when I arrived in England June 2020, my baby was 7 months old, still breastfeeding. My toddler, 3.5 years, didn't speak English because he was raised by an Indonesian nanny. I recognize my privilege. Therefore, I couldn't complain. So I had to translate everything to him while we live here, uh, for a short while. And my eldest at the time was 7, and he was just, the age where you just make friends at school and you just whisked away by your parents to complete a different continent. Um, so we had all 3 kids with all of their problems, which therefore became our problem. And we couldn't even have a second to even process our own crushed ego, I guess, or our own grief from losing our job, um, losing the lifestyle. We used to live in an 800 square meter house with a private pool, that was just 2 steps away from my bedroom, to people here in England refusing for their house to be rented to us, even though we offer to pay 6 months in advance, because they don't want to have a tenant who's unemployed.
Yeah, so
So
a lot of complexities there around that, on top of transitioning from one part of the world into another part of the world, juggling with what's going on with your children, a change in pace with lifestyle, and you having to readapt, refuel, rejuvenate, and just go through this whole reinvention of what is life going to look like, because obviously it's not going back to normal. This is the new norm, and no one can foresee when the end is in sight. But what you did was have faith. And I do want to be respectful of your time, Rebecca. So we're going to begin to wind down. So do you want to just add the bow here, and then we're just gonna jump into the call to action, and then our challenge for the audience could be to continue to follow part of your journey, or we could have you back on later for a part 2.
yes, absolutely. So the bow that ties all of this together is my experience living in a privileged life, and overnight, because of the pandemic, I live in poverty. And you can simply say it's a humbling experience, but no, it's a slap in the face, it's a punch in the jugular, it's a kick in the throat. But from that, I also therefore begin to see that, hey, this means I can start from zero. Also means that I can do whatever I want. So I began to expand my network here in England. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody still know who I am here. But that also means it's a good excuse to say hello and introduce myself to the field, to the industry, to the market, right? And even though I had literally hundreds of rejection of job application, um, I then decide, you know what? Nobody's going to give me a seat at a table. I'm gonna build my own table, and I'm going to provide enough chairs around that table so that other women, especially mothers and minority groups who couldn't have access to job security, or if they do have jobs, they cannot progress because of the layers and layers of biases they have in the workplace. They have brilliant ideas, but they do not even have the confidence or the opportunity to present themselves. Therefore, February this year, I opened my executive learning hub called Upgrading Women, although it's actually Upgrading Women Plus, because I know that there are other gender identities and there are also other minority intersectionalities that I really, really want to give a leg up to these wonderful, brilliant people. There's so many immigrants in England that when you say Asian in the UK, it means differently to when you say Asian in the US. So for your audience listening, in the US, when you say Asian, what comes to your mind? It's the fair skin, small eyes, straight black hair, oriental face, right? But here in the UK, when you say Asian, it means South Asian, as in Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, all that beautiful, gorgeous people. So equally gorgeous to the Oriental. But what I'm saying is that we are also a nation of immigrants.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we still have to struggle in presenting our ideas. And we are very studious people. Immigrants are famous for having the ambition and the drive to be the model immigrant, model citizen, right?
Amazing. And then I would also say too, like coming from parents that are both immigrants, where my mother is West Indian and my father was from Curacao. It is, how do you identify with your race, and you make sure that you are confident in your race and really showcase that without feeling as if you need to diminish a part of your racial group or some cultural ties in order to fit in and seek validation from people who don't understand. So I would share that there. And then I also want to encourage the audience to really check out Upgrading Women. But we're going to jump into the call to action, Rebecca, and we'll have you back for a part two.
Yes.
It'll probably be sometime after I start back up after maternity leave. So, what
Oh,
is, yeah,
yes.
what is your call to action for the audience? How can they connect with you via your website? And where do you primarily hang out on social media?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Lepard, and RebeccaLepard.com is going to launch. But definitely, if you're on my Instagram, you will see all of the updates that whatever project that I'm doing, whatever, especially the voluntary project that I'm doing. And one of them is Design Justice Network, which is actually based in the US, but I'm now like opening a branch in the UK because there's so much work in the diversity, equity, inclusivity, and belonging space that I would like to for you to just check out my Instagram and see what I have to say. And if you have any questions about career journey or being a mother, being an immigrant, being, how to lean in your career, just slide into my DM.
Amazing. And I will have your website information in the show notes. So, audience, that will be linked there. And then I will also, from her website, you'll have the backlinks on your website to your social media platforms, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then just for clarification, so on Instagram, I know you have your Rebecca Lepard page. Do you have one for Upgrading Women as well?
Yes.
Okay, so both.
So yes. So as soon as you go into Rebecca Leppard on Instagram, you will see that in my bio, the link to Upgrading Women, etc.
Okay, perfect. So there you have it, audience. So you could definitely connect with
Mhm.
Rebecca. This is going to be on 40 plus audio platforms, and then the video is on our YouTube channel, which is Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And lastly, but not least, I want to thank each one of you for taking time out of your day to support the content that we shared with you today. So until the next guest, next segment, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing day.